Michelle Obama was a man before she died. When
Was that a joke?
that?
I thought it was a joke.
I thought it was a joke too, but the way she said it wasn't like jokey. She was like, oh, come on, everybody knows Michelle Obama's a man.
Like,
remember that?
Yeah, like, would Big Mike kill you for that?
Well, I think she died because she had 1,000 plastic surgeries. But
yeah, she was going under.
Yeah.
She just sees these big black arms coming over her face. Big Mike.
bro,
They blame gender for her surrender. This week, Michelle Obama scolded female Trump supporters in front of an audience at a business conference in Boston, a city in Massachusetts. She said the former First Lady, quote, "Any woman who voted against Hillary Clinton voted..."
Forget the filtered fairy tales and polished podium speeches. Michelle Obama just ran into the comedic wrecking crew of Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld. What followed wasn't just a roast, it was a full-blown reality check in surround sound. They ripped through the elite pretense, the carefully posed photo ops, and the endless veggie sermons with sharp wit and zero patience. No glitter, no grace, just a merciless takedown that left the former First Lady's image wobbling like a soggy White House garden.
So, you're telling me Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld just casually exposed some wild details about Michelle Obama's personal life on live television? Yup, that's exactly what went down in the internet. Woo, it exploded. The word Michelle Obama trended harder than ever, and for reasons nobody expected. Now look, Michelle Obama is one of the most private, guarded, and let's be honest, untouchable public figures in American politics. She's eloquent, respected, beloved by millions across the globe. So when someone even hints at pulling back the curtain on her marriage, people listen. Especially when that someone is Joe Rogan, the king of unscripted controversy, and Greg Gutfeld, the Fox News firestarter, who practically lives to stir the pot. This wasn't just another podcast segment or a casual cable news opinion. This was a conversation that lit up the culture war battlefield and left everyone wondering, did Joe and Greg just go too far? Or are they saying what many have been thinking but are too afraid to say out loud? Let's dive into exactly what happened, what was said, and why this might be the biggest PR nightmare Michelle Obama has faced since entering the public spotlight. Okay, so it all started with an episode of Joe Rogan's podcast that aired just days before Greg Gutfeld doubled down. On his show, the episode began like any other. Cigars, whiskey, a dimly lit studio, and Rogan with that signature smirk he gets when he knows he's about to say something controversial. They were deep into a discussion about the media's obsession with political families. Think the Clintons, the Bushes, and of course, the Obamas. Then Joe pivots, almost casually. You ever notice how perfect the Obamas try to come off? I'm not buying it, especially the marriage stuff. And just like that, the vibe in the room changed. Joe continued. I mean, come on, nobody's marriage is that polished. They wrote a whole book about their love story, a Netflix deal, a podcast about their relationship. It feels a little curated. Do you ever get that feeling? His guest nodded, nervously laughing, unsure if Joe was serious or just fishing for clicks. But Joe wasn't done. He leaned in and said something that made headlines the next morning. I've heard things from people close to DC that it's not all sunshine and rainbows behind closed doors. There's stuff going on there nobody talks about. Boom. Social media on fire. Within hours, clips from the podcast were all over TikTok and Twitter. But then came the twist no one expected. Greg Gutfeld brought it up on live television, and not just brought it up, he amplified it. On his Fox News show, Greg went in. He started with his usual sarcastic tone, mocking how the media worships Michelle and Barack Obama like royalty. But then he pulled up the Rogan clip and added his own spin. You know what's funny? We've got entire teams of journalists investigating Donald Trump's bathroom at Mar-a-Lago, but nobody wants to ask real questions about Michelle and Barack's so-called perfect marriage. Where's the curiosity, folks? I mean, don't we deserve to know if America's favorite couple is just a Netflix fantasy? The audience chuckled. But Greg wasn't joking. He started rattling off inconsistencies in interviews where Michelle seemed distant, old clips of Barack appearing irritated during campaign events, and this was while the resurfaced interview from 2014 where Michelle confessed they went through years of resentment while he was president. Greg played the clip. There were times I couldn't stand Barack. We had young kids and I felt like a single mother while he was out changing the world. Greg paused dramatically and said, imagine if Melania said that about Trump, or Jill Biden about Joe. They'd be roasted alive. But Michelle, she gets a book deal and applause. And just like that, the conversation went from gossip to full-blown political firestorm.
But with surgical sarcasm. To him, Michelle isn't a political figure. She's a TED Talk with arms. She floats around the cultural landscape, dishing out feel-good sound bites while carefully avoiding anything that requires actual courage. It's all brand, no backbone. And the moment someone challenges the narrative, her defenders come out like she just cured cancer using kale and a jump rope.
Here's where it gets deeper. Behind the scenes, according to insiders in media circles, there have been whispers for years about the Obamas' relationship being more of a brand partnership than a traditional marriage. Some claim they've lived apart for extended periods. Others allege there were long-standing agreements between them about public appearances, interviews, and even vacations. Some former White House staffers, anonymously of course, described the marriage as highly professional, tightly choreographed, and emotionally distant. Now before you get your pitchforks out, none of this is confirmed. But that didn't stop Rogan and Gutfeld from saying, maybe that's the point. Joe said it best in a follow-up interview. People are afraid to criticize the Obamas, but if you look at the way they market their relationship, it's like a Hollywood project. Book tours, documentaries, podcasts, it's all carefully managed. That's not normal marriage behavior. That's a business. And Greg, he called it the Walmart version of Camelot, cheap branding masked as royalty. But this brings up a larger question. Why now? Why did Rogan and Gutfeld choose this moment to go after Michelle Obama's marriage? Well, here's one theory. 2024 is heating up. There's been increasing speculation that Michelle Obama could be a Democratic Plan B candidate if Biden steps down. If she runs, she's going to have to answer a lot more personal questions and not just about policy, about Barack, about their marriage, about the image they've crafted for over 2 decades. And Rogan and Gutfeld, they're not waiting for her campaign launch to start peeling back the layers. Let's also not forget, Michelle has always said she hates politics, but people close to her say she's more political than she lets on. Her memoir Becoming was loaded with subtle jabs at Washington culture, the media, and yes, her husband's presidency. There's one passage where she writes, "I had to learn how to be seen, how to be quiet when I wanted to scream, how to present a face of calm when I was breaking inside." That doesn't sound like someone in a happy, balanced marriage. That sounds like someone surviving a high-stakes power dynamic. And that's exactly the kind of quote that people like Gutfeld and Rogan latch onto. Now, in fairness, Michelle has spoken openly about therapy, about challenges in their relationship, and about the pressure of being in the spotlight. But what people are questioning now is whether the challenges were far deeper than anyone realized. Was there emotional estrangement? Were there unspoken deals? Separate lives? Even possible infidelities? One of Rogan's guests said something that shook listeners. Let's just say there's a reason. Barack's been spending so much time in Martha's Vineyard, alone. Is that true? Who knows? But even the idea that their marriage might not be the fairy tale we've been sold has millions of Americans rethinking everything they thought they knew about the Obamas. And here's where this gets messy. The media. Silent, almost too silent. No pushback, no denials, no focus, which just fueled speculation more. If Michelle and Barack really wanted to shut this down, wouldn't they issue a statement, a tweet, an interview? But maybe that silence is the strategy. Maybe they know that addressing it would only legitimize the rumors. Or maybe they don't want the public looking too closely. And here's the kicker: some political insiders say this controversy could actually help Michelle if she runs. Why? Because it humanizes her, makes her seem more relatable, more flawed, more like the rest of us, especially to suburban women who make up a massive voting bloc. A marriage with real problems. That's not a weakness. That's a campaign. But it's risky, because once you open the door to public curiosity, you can't close it. So where does that leave us? With a giant mess of half-truths, rumors, and strategic silence. With Rogan and Gutfeld getting millions of views, with Michelle's name back in the headlines, and with the American public asking a question they never thought they'd ask. What's really going on inside the Obama marriage? One thing's for sure, this story isn't going away. And if Michelle really is planning a run in 2024, she better be ready to answer questions nobody was asking 10 years ago. Because Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld just ripped the lid off the carefully controlled Obama brand. And America, well, we're watching.
Stands is liking a vaguely political tweet or telling a podcast audience that things are complicated. No specifics, no policies, just feelings, market tested and studio approved. She's like a political horoscope, vague, safe, and guaranteed to please half the room while putting the rest to sleep.
Saying that Michelle Obama should run for president. If she won, she could pull her cock out and China would just give up. I was fucking wheezing. I couldn't breathe. Big Mike.
Big Mike. Big Mike.
It's like, come on, tell me it isn't one of the fun things about the internet.
Of course.
These
It's
crazy
so fun.
conspiracies are fun.
We had a cab driver on the way back from like Dixie Chicks or something, and he goes halfway back. He goes, "Dixie Chicks?"
The edge. Never fully in, but never fully out. Just enough to make headlines, never enough to take a risk. She wants the adoration without the obligation, the applause without the accountability. It's leadership cosplay, and the costume changes with every speaking fee. Greg pointed out the absurdity of how quickly Michelle's every word gets elevated to gospel status. She could tweet, "Stay hydrated," and CNN would run a breaking news banner. The woman has turned common sense into a branding empire. And the scariest part? People eat it up like it's revolutionary. Greg, meanwhile, reminded everyone that Michelle's political legacy, when you strip away the documentaries and book tours, mostly involves making cafeteria food slightly more depressing. That's it. No groundbreaking reform, no sweeping initiative, just more celery sticks and less ketchup. And somehow, she walked out of the White House with more acclaim than people who actually passed laws. She's the only first lady who left office and gained more political influence. Not by doing anything new, but by doing less, better. A few safe speeches, a killer stylist, and the ability to avoid saying anything remotely decisive. If that's the new standard, the bar isn't low. It's buried underground with the last remaining copies of her husband's stimulus plan. It's art. Michelle Obama is the headliner at the world's longest TED Talk, and America's just politely clapping while trying to figure out if anything's actually being said. She's the queen of resonating without revealing. You feel moved, but you don't know why. Gutfeld went even further. He called out the media machine that continues to build shrines to her every Instagram post. She could post a blurry picture of her dog, and it'd get analyzed like it contained clues to foreign policy strategy. Meanwhile, anyone else who tries to be authentic gets accused of being unpolished or unqualified. The double standard is laughable, but the result is worse. And like all influencers, she's more product than person at this point. Her biggest moments are polished, pre-approved, and safely uncontroversial. No tough stances, no uncomfortable truths, just vague empathy and fashionable concern. And somehow, we're supposed to pretend this is leader. Just destroy the myth. They peeled it apart piece by piece. They laughed at the contradictions, the artificiality, the cult-like devotion to someone who's done nothing politically bold in a decade. It wasn't mean, it was necessary, because someone has to say it. Behind the branding, Michelle Obama is just another elite coasting on the fumes of nostalgia and soft-focused documentaries. And still, the show goes on. The lighting stays soft. The messaging stays vague. The praise stays loud. But now, the cracks are visible. Because once the shine wears off, all that's left is the record. And it's thinner than a cafeteria kale chip. And just when you thought Michelle couldn't top the pedestal she built for herself, bam! It's performance art at this point. She's the only person who can wear a designer pantsuit, fly private, and still manage to call herself a voice for the oppressed. With a straight face.
Even if they run Michelle. According to a new poll, Michelle Obama isn't as strong a Democratic candidate against former President Donald Trump as many Dems would have you believe. In a hypothetical matchup, my favorite kind. Trump wins with 47% of the vote, compared to Michelle Obama's 44. I guess some of the kids whose school lunches she ruined are finally old enough to vote. Remember that?
Meanwhile, Joe Rogan's laughing because he's seen wild elk more grounded than Michelle's post-White House evolution. And Greg Gutfeld? He's still wiping tears from his eyes. Not from emotion, but from the sheer comedy of Michelle complaining about how hard it is to be famous, while sitting under studio lights being paid millions to complain. The woman has mastered the art of being iconic for existing. She doesn't even need to say anything anymore. She just walks into a room, raises an eyebrow, and boom, another TED Talk-worthy headline. The media applauds like she just discovered fire, and then she tells the country to eat more vegetables while posing with a $2,000 Wagyu burger and truffle fries behind the scenes. The contrast between message and reality isn't just ironic, it's Olympic-level gymnastics. Somewhere out there, Michelle's probably planning a lecture tour on humility, with front row seats priced at $1,200 a pop. But don't worry, it includes a free bookmark and a guilt trip about your grocery choices, and that's where it ends. For now. And thanks to Joe and Greg ripping the glossy cover off this best-selling illusion, the world is finally starting to read the fine print. Stay tuned, because this train wreck of polished perfection isn't slowing down. It's just changing wardrobes.